The absolute best game of 2024 right now is Princess Peach Showtime, developed by Goodfield Games and published by Nintendo. I was so enthusiastic about this game that I went ahead and imported a Japanese exclusive game by the same developer. Otogi, Katsugeki, Mameda no Bakeru, Oracle Saitarou no Sainan review. Okay? I actually put this game on my most anticipated of 2024 list because I was anticipating an English release, but I was so pleased with Princess Peach Showtime that I decided to go ahead and commit to purchasing this game and supporting the developers. This is, of course, a self-published game by the studio, their first ever, and a lot of fans were really enthusiastic about this game. This looked like, to us, a throwback to N64 and GameCube era 3D platformers. A huge focus on action, a lot of creativity, a lot of zaniness, and it does deliver to a certain extent. I'm not going to sit here and say the game is bad or it was disappointing or that like it wasn't good, but at the end of the day, this is a title, a smaller title from a studio that didn't seem to have a lot of financial backing, because there are a lot of issues with this game that I don't think would have been prevalent in a properly Nintendo published title. I think this game is ambitious. I think it has a lot going for it. I think it really demonstrates Goodfield's creativity, and they have a lot of good things going for it, right? Great visual design, great mechanics, great visuals. But what it all comes down to, really, what it feels like to me is that the game isn't polished enough. The game does feel as if it really struggles going from good to great, right? This is a serviceable GameCube era 3D platformer that cannot compete with the 3D platformers of not only today, but the classics of that era. My honest opinions upon playing this is that there are a lot of good ideas here, but they're held back by a lot of very severe mistakes. And I do think the big thing that sticks out to me the most is the difficulty. The game is more difficult than Princess Peach Showtime, to be sure, but it's not as well put together. It's not as well presented. It's not as cohesive. Although you will be dying in Mamoru Bakeru a lot more than in Princess Peach Showtime, a lot of times the deaths feel unearned. They feel cheap. And you're just going to respawn and do the same section anyway with no real penalty. The game really doesn't feel as if it makes the distinction between being a game for kids that's meant to be an easy playthrough, like a casual playthrough, and like hardcore gamers, right? Because kids, I don't think, will appreciate the game's complexities and all of the transformations, all the work that went into the level designs. But I don't think adults, like, who are hardcore fans of the genre will really get into it either. Like, I feel like the combat has the potential to be great. I feel like the boss fights have the potential to be stellar and interesting, right? I feel like the levels have the potential to be good, but the game never quite lives up to its own ambition. Like, for example, one of the things that really intrigued me about this game when I first heard about it is that you have two different attack buttons, right? A left and a right stick. You can see here that the character is throwing out attacks with two weapons in each hand. You can choose which hand to attack with, and it really sticks out compared to other 3D action platformers like it, right? You have different combos. You can come at enemies with from different angles. You have charge attacks. You can like do all sorts of things. But in practice, the enemies are so simplistic that the extra layer of complexity of the combat doesn't really amount to much. All right, you have all these vehicle sections. You have like several. You have like snowboarding. You have planes. You have like a boat. You have like a car, right? You have all these really cool, interesting like vehicle sections that have a lot of thought and care put into them, a lot of creativity, but at the same time, they're not as well fleshed out as something you would see in other 3D platformers, right? you have all these interesting level designs, right? You have all these interesting locations, but a lot of times all you have to do is just kind of run to your destination and just ignore everything else. Like the levels in this game often feel like they're way too big and spacious, right? Like instead of having like a really tight, compact, like linear level, what you're doing is going through like these really large areas where there aren't enough enemies on the screen, there aren't enough obstacles, and they look good, they feel good, the mechanics are interesting, but at the end of the day, like a lot of times all you have to do is just run past everything you're seeing, right? And I found myself comparing the game a lot to Super Mario 3D World, actually. The game does feel as if it could have learned a lot by studying that game, specifically. Like, I feel like the levels go on way too long. When you compare it to 3D World, where it has like these really short, compact, interesting levels, where it throws one gimmick at you, utilizes that gimmick to its full potential, and then you're on to the next level, experiencing the next thing, right? This game has a similar design philosophy, but what it tried to do was make the levels really, really long and throw a bunch of things at you at once. And what that amounts to is that like you get a lot of interesting scenarios, a lot of interesting set pieces, and a lot of interesting ideas, but they either don't stick around long enough to land, or they stay around way too long and you get tired of them. I was really surprised when I was going through these levels just how often I just felt like I was going through the motions. Like, okay, gotta beat these guys, gotta get past this gimmick, gotta figure this out, gotta figure out how to navigate this area. There are like good things about the game, to be sure, but all of its ideas just feel like they fall flat to a certain extent. Now, is the game bad? No. Of course not. Like, I had a blast playing this and experiencing, like, this game and its ideas. One of the things that I really liked about it, you gradually unlock transformations as you go through the game, right? You get this little mini guy. You get the ability to use the Minish cap wherever you want, right? So you shrink down and you can go into mouse holes and get into these little, like, micro adventures, right? Really, really cool. You get like another ability where you get guns and you can like it auto fires. It feels good, right? It's satisfying to use. It's cool. It's interesting. But again, like it's not fleshed out enough. Like you don't get enough mileage out of the good aspects of this game, and it's so disappointing because I think there are a number of indie games this year that have far surpassed this one already. The big one that I will recommend over this is Penny's Big Breakaway. Penny's Big Breakaway had more interesting boss fights. It had better mechanics, better stage designs. It knew how to incorporate longer levels without them getting boring or stale, right? When you play through Penny's Big Breakaway, it takes a long while for you to get like repeat level themes. And by the time that happens, you're already like 8 worlds in and you're nearing the end of the game. Like Penny's Big Breakaway gave you a lot for your money's worth, right? It took a lot of time to get through. It was satisfying to play. Like getting the most out of Penny's unique mechanics was a lot of fun. Like Penny's Big Breakaway really knew what it wanted to be and delivered on that. And I think with this one, it doesn't really hit the mark, right? Another thing. This is a Japanese import, so nothing is in English aside from some basic text, but location names usually. It is perfectly playable without understanding Japanese. I didn't understand a word of what was going on, so unfortunately I can't really comment on the characters or the themes or the ideas. I have no idea what this game is about. It has something to do with like some Tanuki kid going out like rescuing girls and like fighting some aliens or something. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, but it's very, very Japanese. To the point where I really don't think this game is going to get brought over here. Now that I've played it, like, I don't see this game having an audience in anywhere other than Japan. Because this thing is very much rooted in Japanese culture. Right? You have, like, all these it's literally you going around Japan exploring all of its prefectures. Like you'll go to Saitama, you'll go to Hokkaido, you'll go to Tokyo, not Hiroshima. Like Osaka has a level, right? You're going all over Japan, like in these really Japanese settings with these very Japanese characters. Like it feels like something out of like a 90s or early 2000s anime in a sense. And like I can't see anybody who didn't grow up in that era really finding value in this game, really. Like it reminds me a lot of like Fire Emblem Engage in that way, where like, oh yeah, it reminds me of that era, but that era was cheesy and like kind of unpopular with a lot of other fans. Like I'm nostalgic for it. I love that stuff. I love that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, does it have mass market appeal? Like, is this going to do well in America? And I think not. Like, I don't think this has an audience in general in America. Like, the people who are interested in buying and playing this, people like me, are just going to import it, right? So, like, to me, I don't see this game ever getting released over here. It's just way too rooted into the culture. It just doesn't feel like it really has a lot to offer to people other than like its core audience. It reminds me a lot of the Wonderful 101 in that way, where it's a game that just feels like it's too esoteric to reach any real popularity, and it's a shame. I was expecting a lot more from this. I really do think the developers are very talented and one of Nintendo's most underrated partners. Like I said, like Princess Peach Showtime is one of my favorite games. Is my favorite game of the year so far. But playing this, experiencing it, just formulating my thoughts on it. Like I do think like. My opinion is very mixed, right? Like I had fun with it, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else, right? Like it's just one of those games. Like if you're interested in this game, you have dozens of other better alternatives, not just on Switch, but on other platforms, other indie games. There are games with like a lower budget than this that are better, right? Like I said, Penny's Big Breakaway way surpassed this game for me in every way, shape, and form. Like I would way more strongly recommend it over this. Again, like the game isn't bad, right, by any stretch of the imagination. But when you think about it, like when there are so many other games you could be playing instead, like it does feel in a lot of ways that it is a waste of time. And we do have to think about this when talking about this review. Talking about games and reviews, because being good simply isn't good enough. You have to deliver a mind-blowing experience to keep people engaged and to keep people coming back. And for this game, we simply did not get that.